Father and our God, we thank you again for another day. Thank you for life, health, and strength. We pray now for wisdom, knowledge, understanding of your word. Pray for these thy people. Thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for allowing us to be here. We thank you for allowing us to experience another Sunday morning. Now, God, give us strength, give us power. Bless your people. In Jesus' name we pray and ask it. Amen. 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 We have a beautiful lesson, and I want to admit to you that I wrestled with this lesson. Amen. I did. I wrestled with this lesson because I really wanted to know what the word was saying to us as regards to faith that is tested. Amen. Faith that is tested. Taken from 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 11. And just a brief history. When we start to deal with 2 Corinthians, we know that this is Paul's second letter to the Corinthian church. Amen. And he's writing to them because the church has been swayed. Amen. The church has been swayed or persuaded. Amen. By false teachers. Amen. Somebody. And we are living in this day and time of false teachers. Amen. They dress like us. They look like us. But they're not of us. Amen. And you got to know where you stand. Amen. You got to know what you stand for. Amen. Either you're going to be a Christian all the way or none at all.
All right.
Amen. You can't be a Christian on Sunday. And then Monday you just live all kind of. I almost said that word. Amen. Amen. The church has been swayed. Watch this. The church has been swayed against Paul. Amen.
Yeah.
This church has allowed these false teachers to say some untrue things about Pastor Paul.
Yeah.
Amen. Now, don't y'all let nobody start telling y'all no crazy stuff about Pastor Brown. Amen. They start saying, well, you know, he got a squeak in his voice. Amen. Listen, they were saying all kind of things about Paul. Saying he don't talk like y'all talk. He talk different. Amen. So he not strong. They were swaying the church against Paul and his teachings. Amen. And you've got to know where you stand. Amen. And they got the heat on, I just got hot. All right. Well, at least we got heat. If it had been cold, you'd been saying, it's too cold in here. So thank God. Amen. All right. So the church has been swayed by false teachers. They've gotten a grip in the church. They've stirred the people against Paul. They put out false truth against him. Amen. Trying to get a foothold in the church. And you have to understand that Corinth was a place for all kinds and types of religions and faiths, and people were coming in and out. And when they began to mingle with the Christian wasn't strong enough to stand his or her ground. Amen. And that's why so many of us are persuaded to go the other way as soon as Jehovah's Witness or somebody knock on your door. Amen. Then all of a sudden you find yourself, yeah, you right. Yeah, you right. Amen. You got to know where you stand. And watch this. You got to know where you stand with each other. Amen. So faith that is tested, and you really don't know what you're made out of until you're tested. Amen. Everybody say they got faith until you're tested. Everybody's a Christian until you're tested. Amen. You say you're a member of Strangers Rest until you're tested. And I think, and I believe that the lesson is more than just a test of Christianity, but it's also a test of Paul, whether or not he's going to allow what people say about him stop him. And how many times have we allowed what people say about us stop us? I don't care how pretty your car is, before you drive, it's tested. Amen. Even our garments pass the test. They stand tested by. Everything goes through a test. And so therefore we're going to be tested. And then our faith is tested. But a faith that is tested, a faith that is tried, is true faith. Amen. How many of you know our trials come to make us strong? And so what Pastor Paul has to do is that he cannot allow this to keep going forward. And so he says to them in verse 1, he said, now, this is the third time. Amen. Now listen, I don't know about y'all, but if my mama got to the third time, amen. Amen. Don't let her get to the third time. You heard me the first time. But Paul says, listen, he says, this is the third time I'm coming to you. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. That's why, first of all, it was so important that Jesus would get out of the grave that third time, that third day moment. Amen. The Jews believed in 3 witnesses. Amen. But Paul is saying, listen, now this is the third time I'm coming to you. But listen, I'm coming to you whether or not anybody else know about it. I know I'm coming the third time. That's all you need to know. He said, I'm coming to you the third time. And he says, I told you before. So that means that he's told them before. This is not the first time that he's had this conversation. So he says, I told you before and foretell you as if I were present the second time, and being absent now, I write to them which therefore would hitherto have sinned, and to all the other, that if I come again, I will not spare. Amen. Sometimes we just know better. Amen. Sometimes we just know better. And when you know better, you ought to do better.
Yeah. All right.
Amen. Amen. Listen, let me say this. For those who are in ministry, you need to understand that there's going to be some trials to ministry. Amen. Everybody don't like leadership. Now they want to be the leader from the back. They hot up to the front about what you ought to do, but you turn it over to them. That's why when Sister Brown is driving, I don't say it. No, that's the truth. You drive and let you drive. Amen. Even though when I drive, I try to get in the lane I'm gonna be in, but she just drives. So I don't say nothing. I'll be over there, I'm just saying. Get in that lane, get in this lane. That's the way I would drive. But over the years, I've learned whoever's driving, let them drive. Amen, somebody. Listen, there's two ways to this church, right? You can come 30 or you can come 20. So when Sister drives, she comes 20. And I have to sit there and go 20. Amen. All I'm saying is those who are in charge, let them be in charge. Amen. Paul said, listen, I done told you, and I'm coming before you, I done told you. He said, but now when I come, I'm not going to spare you. Because you know better. Most of the time when you know better, you ought to do better. But he has to come. He has to come. Watch this. He has to come and keep putting out fires. How often should we have to keep coming to church, putting out fires? Amen. Because right now in California, it's burning, but it's burning by a whole lot of little fires. And the whole state is burning by little fires. Amen, somebody. Watch this. Verse 3 says, since you seek a proof of Christ speaking in me. Because see, one thing about it, sometimes folks say, well, ain't nothing to her. And ain't nothing to him. And then they want to try to question whether or not you are of God. Amen, somebody. And so these false teachers are putting stuff in their ears, and they're questioning whether or not Paul is a true apostle or if he's of God. And so he says, since you seek a proof of Christ speaking in me. And one thing about it, you got to know who's in you and who's empowering you. And if you don't know that, you're going to be in big trouble. Amen, Pastor Graham. Amen. Amen. You got to know who's working in you and who's working in your life. And since you have a question about my apostleship, on whether or not Christ is in me, he says in verse 30, since ye seek a proof, amen. And why do we always have to prove stuff? Why do you always have to prove that you are who you say you are? Amen. A lot of times, you'll know the tree by the fruit it bears. Amen, somebody. So, Paul says, since ye seek a proof of Christ speaking in me, which to you is not weak, but is mighty in you. Which to you is not weak, but is mighty in you. I wish I had my New Living translation for that. Well, watch this. Here it is. You seek the proof of Christ in me. But because I don't act like and throw things, amen, and show my temper, that does not mean that I'm weak. Amen, somebody. Don't take my meekness as a weakness. Amen. Because I'm not slandering everybody around me. That does not mean that I'm weak. Amen. You don't have to always blow your whistle. They know who you are. They know you the big train. Huh? Every time the train come by and get to a little intersection, they want to woo woo. Oh, we know you the big train. Amen. So Paul said it's not a form of weakness. And then what he wants them to know too is that his Christ is not weak either.
All right.
Amen, somebody. Just because he allowed them to nail his hands does not mean that he was weak.
Right.
Amen. The old preacher would say, if you think I'll fight, nail my hand. Amen, somebody. Amen. But he's not weak. He says, for though he was crucified through weakness, so the ones who crucified him, they were the weak ones.
Yeah.
Amen. He says, for though he was crucified through weakness, yet he liveth by what? The power of God. So even though they nailed his hands, remember, and they buried him, when he got up out of the grave, he got up with all power in his hand.
All right.
Amen. So for these false prophets who want to claim that Christ was weak, Paul says, no, he wasn't weak. Those who crucified him, they were weak. Amen. He says, yet he liveth by the power of God, for we also are weak in him. Because what happens is that when we are in him, then I become weak to agitation, because in my old life, if you agitated me, amen, then I have to go lay como.
All right.
Y'all know, I guess I should say that. Amen. Amen. So you have to understand that now that he's in me, he controls me, and so he makes me appear to be weak, but really I'm strong. I wish I had somebody. That Paul is saying that the Christ in me, working in me, whereas I'm cold when I used to say what I was thinking.
All right.
Amen. Some of y'all like that name. The difference is you still say what you think.
That's right.
And so he has to humble me. That appears to be weak, that he humbles me to where I don't act like I used to.
All right. Amen.
Amen. And because he's in me now, and he causes me to be weak, I'm weak in him. But we shall what? Live with him by what? By the power of God toward you. Watch this. While I'm in your presence, I've got to live, amen, in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all missed the whole thing. Listen to what he says. He says, but we shall what? Live with him by the power of God toward you. In your presence and around you, I have to live the Christian way. Without the help of God, I can't do it and you can't do it. Because when you go to the store, let's say to the store, and you spend all your money, and you get up there and they treat you like,
That's right. Amen.
amen, you're not going to take that. Not that old you. That old you. Amen. But because Christ is in us, it causes us to live a different way, even toward our enemy. Amen. You can't love those who despitefully use you unless Christ is in you. Amen. You can't do good to those who hate you. Amen. I'm talking about they're actually doing this toward you. And then whatever you do toward them is a reflection on the church. And you really don't know who you are until you're tested.
All right, all right.
And we're tested every day. Amen. Even every day we're tested. But you got to live a certain way toward those while they're watching. Amen. Amen. That's the test. If I say something derogatory to you, are you going to say something back? And then we try to justify it. Say, well, now you know he ain't doing working on me. He's still working on me. Then I have enough nerve to say it and then say I'm sorry. If you say it, you done already tainted the jury. Even though the judge says strike it from the record, but you don't strike it from the mind. Y'all do know that, right? That's what lawyers do. They say it, they put it out there knowing that the judge says strike it from the record. It may not be on the record, but it's in somebody's mind. It's already out there. And you can't put it back. It's like squeezing all of the toothpaste out, then trying to put it back in. It ain't gonna work. So as a Christian, you gotta watch what you say, how you say it, because once you do it, it's active. And so Paul is trying to contain himself because he knows that I've got to live this way toward y'all while I'm in y'all's presence.
Yeah.
Test. Faith that is tested. So watch this. I like verse 5, and we probably ought to stop at verse 5. We really ought not go any further than verse 5. Because when we talk about faith that is tested, he says, examine. Can I tell you 99.9% of all of it is you. You examining you. Amen. You got to examine yourself. Where am I in my faith? Examine yourself. I would think Paul in some kind of way is saying, why y'all trying to examine me? You ought to be examining yourself. Amen. Ain't that after he didn't? See, when I got to verse 5, like verse 3 says, since you seek proof of Christ speaking in me. Then when I got down to verse 5, he said, examine yourself. Y'all see that? Huh? Why you worried about Jesus and me? Huh? Examine yourself. We need to examine ourselves. Amen. We wonder why people are not, really drawn to us. Because sometimes we've got the wrong attitude. Sometimes we have the wrong attitude for church. Yes. Amen, Pastor Boy. So, rule number 1, examine yourselves whether ye be what? In the faith. In the Christian faith. So watch it. He said, whether ye be what? In the faith. Because first of all, nobody knows whether or not they're in but you.
Yeah.
And you're either in or you're out. Now, this I in right here, in the Greek it denotes a fixed position. Amen. It is a fixed position. You are no swaying, no going back and forth. Paul says, whether ye be in a fixed position in your Christian faith. Amen. And it has to be so strong that you're not going to be swayed either way. Amen. You know you in. So watch what he said. He said, examine yourself whether or not you're in a fixed position in your faith. And then he says, prove what? Y'all read it like I'm reading. Prove your who? Your own self. Amen. Did you hear this again? Verse 3 says, since you see a proof of Christ speaking in me. Verse 5 says, prove your own self.
All right.
Some of y'all don't like it.
All right.
I thought y'all loved me. I've been gone 3 days and y'all don't love me. Amen. Listen. Faith that is tested, but you gotta examine yourselves.
That's right.
Whether you be what? In the faith, in the Christian faith,
Yes, sir.
in the church. Amen. He says, prove your own selves. Then he says, know ye not your own selves. All right? Listen, let me say it this one. Some things you got to know for yourself. Because people can tell me that Jesus died for me.
Yeah.
But there's a certain point that I've got to know he died for me. You got to know him for yourself. It's all about every individual being responsible for their own individual self.
That's right.
Nobody should have to call you and tell you that it's Sunday school time. Amen. Amen. Time shouldn't have to change for you to show up early because you didn't know that it was daylight savings time.
That's right.
If we don't do nothing but verse 5, verse 5 really tells the whole story when it comes to faith that is tested. Because see, we have to examine ourselves. Let me say it this way. Do we really know how to examine ourselves? Have we ever really did a self-examination? Let me say it this way. When you do a self-examination, you go to your doctor's office and you tell him. You done already said, now doc, this is it, this is this, this is that, this is that. And the doctor saying, well, let me check it out. But you already then examine yourself. Your reason for going is because you've examined yourself. All right? So spiritually, how many of us really spiritually examine ourselves? How faithful am I? Amen. How dedicated am I? How trustworthy am I? Can God trust me with the blessings that he's given me? Amen. How many of us really examine ourselves before we even leave the house? Have we ever examined ourselves and say, what am I going to church for?
All right.
Amen. Why did I get up this morning to come to church? I'm talking about a self-examination on why I'm even here. Have I even examined myself whether or not I'm in the right ministry? It goes to examining ourselves. And that's as far as saying, I can't blame it on Sister Davis. I can't put all the blame on Sister Davis. Well, I don't go to church because Sister Davis. Amen. I was singing in the choir, but Sister Davis is in there. I'm talking about something. I'm talking about examining yourself. Because it might not be Sister Davis. If I do a true examination of myself, it might not be her. Because some people will form an opinion of you and they don't even know you. They're not even taking out the time to find out who you are. And they want to try to put a label on you because somebody else has said, well, now, I don't know much about it, but you know. I'm trying to leave verse 5, but I can't. And we need not blame folk because we're not where we are. Because if God has been good to you like I know He has, you ought to do better. Amen. That's one excuse you're not going to use when you get before God, is that I would have did this, but I didn't because Sugar Boo was in my way. Don't try to blame it on Sugar. Y'all might not know him as Sugar, I'm sorry. You understand what I'm saying? You understand? What? Church says, examine yourselves. Whether you be in the faith, prove your own self. Amen, somebody. Prove your own self. You know who you are, right?
Oh, yeah.
Prove your own self. They say you're not a Christian. Well, that's what you say. But I'm going to watch my walk. I'm going to watch my talk. I'm going to watch how I give, watch how I live, watch how I love. I'm going to examine myself. And when somebody says you're not who you say you are, then that's a good indication. Maybe you ought to check yourself. Maybe I've done something that's caused somebody to think negative of who I am. Because I don't want anybody to think negative of my Christ. Amen, somebody. Listen, if I act any kind of way, it's a reflection on Jesus Christ. Somebody's going to say, well, I don't want to be a Christian because the way Pastor Brown acted. I thought I better say me, I know sometimes the preacher don't act right. A lot of people have fallen out of the church because of the preacher. Amen. Because the deacon. Because the usher. People are falling out because people are not who they say they are. They're in the position, but they're acting. Amen. Y'all didn't know this was in there? All right. So he says, examine yourselves, prove yourselves, know yourselves. Y'all see that? Examine yourselves, prove yourselves, but know yourselves. Because nobody knows you like you. Amen. You know you better than. Amen. You know that old you, and you know that new you. And sometimes that old you will take control of the new you. Amen. Don't think you left that old you at the house. If it wasn't for the Holy Ghost keeping that old you under control. Amen. Amen. So, examine yourself, prove yourself, know yourself, how that Jesus Christ is in you. Amen. is in you, except ye be reprobates. So that word reprobates has to do, let me give you this word, it fakes. Yeah. You might be a fake. Amen. You're not who you say you are. Amen. Y'all got off. Sometimes you get quiet when you don't want nobody to step on you.
That's right.
Or you tucking your toes. Examine yourself. Know yourself.
Yes, sir.
Amen. Whether Christ is in you. Otherwise, he says, you're a reprobate. Amen. Like the New Living. The New Living uses the word reprobate. What does it use? Genuine. All right? So if you're not genuine, you're fake. If you're not real, amen. What you got?
I looked it up when I was studying it. It said, beyond hope of salvation.
Huh? Beyond?
Beyond hope of salvation.
Okay.
Now, is that part of it? Kind of sort of?
So if you are faking, all right, then you are beyond salvation. Amen. All right. Any other definition? All right. Huh? Rejected by God. So you mean to tell me you're going to do all of this preaching and singing and doing all of that and then get before God and be rejected? Amen. Because you are beyond the hope of salvation. Y'all see that? So I said, examine yourself, right? Prove yourself, know yourself, how that Jesus Christ is in you, except ye be, what was that word? Beyond the hope of salvation. You are, listen, you are out of reach.
Yeah.
You are. You mean to tell me that we could actually go through the motions and be out of reach? That's sad. So the key is I've got to really examine myself. Let's do it this way. He says in verse 6, but I trust that ye shall know that ye are not beyond the hope of salvation. Y'all see that? Let me say this too while I'm here. And thank God for, this is just a little Bible lesson. In the original Bible was a big book, okay? So when King James wrote the book, he had to take out some words, all right? So when we do Bible study, we go back and get all of these words. Amen. And it begins to make sense. So if King James uses the word reprobate, and then you go back and say beyond the hope of salvation, you see how many words that is?
Yeah.
Amen. So what he did, he condensed it to where you don't have as many words, and that's why you do a word study, Bible study, so that you can go back and get those other words. And that's why you have to be careful with every other translation. There's some translations that have taken words out. And you have to be careful when that happens. All right? So that's why we kind of stick with the King James or the New King James. All right? But I trust those other translations like the New Living, if it's right in line to what I'm reading.
Yeah.
All right? So, but Paul says, but I trust that ye shall know. Amen. That you know whether or not. Amen. You are in the proper, right relationship with God. So that's something that you got to know. All right? Verse 7, he says, now I pray to God that ye what? Do no evil. Not that what? That she what? That should appear approved. But ye shall what? Shall do that which is honest. All right? So, but that ye shall what? Do that which is honest. Though we be as reprobates. Amen. As those who have no hope of salvation. All right? So Paul is praying, and a lot of times that's what you have to do, especially when it's out of your control, is that I pray for you. Amen, somebody. Rather than judge somebody, pray for them. Amen. So that you won't be in danger of the judgment and causing blasphemy. It's better for you to pray for somebody than to say he or she is not a child of God. Amen, Pastor Brian. You keep yourself out of judgment when you learn to pray for people. And then he says in verse 8, for we can do nothing but against what? The truth. Amen. But for the truth. Because one thing about it, the truth will stand by itself. And it really doesn't need my help nor your help. Amen. The truth doesn't need a crutch. Amen. The truth can stand by itself. And then Jesus says, for ye shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Amen, somebody. He says, for we are glad when we are weak, and ye are strong, and this also we wish even your perfection. Amen, somebody. How you know that we're always trying to work toward maturity? Amen, somebody. He says, for we are glad. And sometimes it's hard to find folk that'll be glad for it. Amen.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Amen. Amen. He said, for we are glad. Amen. When we are weak and ye are strong. Amen, somebody. He says, we are glad. He says, and this also we wish even your perfection. He said, therefore I write these things being absent. Amen. Only reason I'm writing to you because I'm absent. He said, lest being present, I should what? Use sharpness. Let me say it this way. Sometimes we don't like for folk to tell us the truth. Amen. Amen. And so Paul says, I'm writing this letter because if I was present, I have to really be sharp and hard. Amen. If I was present, I would have to say, get somewhere and sit down. Amen. Paul says that it's a good thing I'm writing this letter. He says, being present, I should use sharpness. He says, according to what power which the Lord had given to me to edification and not what? To destruction. Amen. So I'd have to use sharpness, but he says it's for edification, and not to destroy. Amen. Somebody. Sometimes it's a matter of approach, and how we approach, and how we say what we need to say. But it's never to destroy you. Amen, somebody. Sometimes we just need to know the truth. Amen. And you need a leader, you need a pastor that'll tell you the truth.
Right.
Amen. And if you want somebody just to sweeten everything up for you and keep it all sweet. Amen. You're going to have to find a sugar pastor. Amen. A sugar pastor. He just sprinkling sugar on here. Everybody's sweet. Oh, baby, that's so good. No. So he says in verse 11, he says, finally, brethren, and I like that word, brother, because that tells me he's not talking to anybody. He's talking to the church. He's talking to those of like mind. Amen. He's talking to those who are blood bought.
Yeah.
So he says, finally, brethren, farewell. He says, be perfect, be of good comfort, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall what? Be with you. That's my whole hope right there. Is that if you examine yourself and know where you stand, amen. He says, finally, brother, farewell. He says, be perfect. Now, none of us can really be perfect, but we can be mature.
Oh, yeah.
Amen. Amen. We're always working on our maturity. Amen. So this word perfect, don't let that mess you up thinking that everybody is perfect, but we ought to be working on it. Amen. I'm working on watching what I say. Amen. I'm working on watching how I treat my brother and my sister. I'm working on how I look and how I smile. You can tell when you're fake smiling. So the last verse, I like the verse because this is the be verse. Be perfect. Be of good comfort. Be of one mind. Y'all see that? Huh? Live in peace.
Yeah.
And the God of love and peace shall be what? With you. Amen, somebody.
Amen.
Let's give God a hand clap of praise. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this word today. Lord, help us to examine ourselves. Help us to prove ourselves. Help us to be perfect. We can only do it with your help. Bless our Sunday school, our superintendent, all of our teachers, our leaders, each and every person under the sound of my voice. Be anybody here today that don't know Jesus, don't know him in the pardon of their sin. God, give them strength today to step out and step forward. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.